Thank you. Thank you very much for that nice sort of like overview of what I'm going to say. So thank you, everyone, for being here with me this morning, well, being here with us this morning. And it was a real honor to be asked to do a keynote because, it's always great to have opportunities to rumble on about things that really sort of concern me. So this, as has just been said, this keynote is called Our Expertise is Going to Waste. And this is actually based on something I actually heard somebody say. So I just thought, I'm going to ask this person. I don't want to just kind of plagiarize like that. But, I asked them and I said, can I use what you said? And she said it was absolutely fine. But anyway, so what it says on the tin, just getting you all to sort of think about, experiences of women and marginalized groups in academia and, how sometimes they don't necessarily get the chance to use their skills and their talents and their knowledge, and then how this may lead to sort of disengagement down the line. Okay, so effectively, what I'll cover here, break it down a bit more specifically. So I'll think about how valuable expertise and knowledge, and particularly women, Black and minority ethnic groups and other marginalized groups, it goes under-recognized, okay? And, there's a lot of reasons behind that. There's a lot of kind of like historical reasons as to why that happens. And it translates into lots and lots of different professions and just in social life more generally. But obviously, we're going to focus about academia here. And I'm not just going to focus on what happens within universities, because I think it happens before, and people often forget that that pipeline. So I'll talk a little bit about that, and then I'll think about, okay, well, how do we address it? Because there's no point in just sitting here and talking about the problems. We've got to think, what do we do? How do we improve things? And my suggestions are that we need to reframe and reevaluate what expertise means. I think it should be broadened. And then also to create opportunities to kind of get people under undergraduate research, undergraduate level researching, because I think if you do that and then you start to sort of like, inculcate this in their minds, and then this can kind of help them to think, well, actually, I have the ability and I want to continue this. But we'll talk more about that a little bit later. Right. Okay. Whenever I do these speeches, I always, being an autobiographer, I always like to sort of like draw on my own experience and then kind of move out, because it often informs what I've observed. So I'm just going to take you back to October 2005. So on October the 3rd, so we're exactly 17 years last Sunday, I think it was, last Monday. So I started as a visiting lecturer. And I remember, I think I had two courses to look after, and then I was a year tutor. And when I came in, I was like literally like Tigger. I was bouncing around the campus, smiling like, there's no tomorrow. I was just really, really excited that I'd actually got this job. And I was just like, yes, I've got into academia. Yes, I'm doing my PhD. I was absolutely buzzing. Okay. And I was very bright-eyed. I had no wrinkles or anything like that. But, it was like the world was my oyster. And I think what was driving that was obviously, the research area that I was looking at. But then also I was really, really, really happy to be working with the students that I worked with. And to be honest with you, I'm still very blessed with all of the students that I've ever had. But it was a great experience in the sense that I learned so much from them, as much as they were learning from me, and everybody coming from all different walks of life. So that made it really, really exciting. But I guess while I had obviously a really strong knowledge of kind of like structural racism and how it operates within institutions like the education system, the health system, anywhere else, and also like micro experiences, so like my own personal experience of being sort of told that I shouldn't even think about going to university because I'm Black. So a careers teacher blatantly came out and told me that when I was 17. So yeah, you know, when you hear that, and then you just sort of think, wow, you know, this is how the world is. It forces you to look at what's going on. And then obviously there's ableism as well, because I have a disability. I have arthritis and classism, because I come from a working class background. So I've experienced these kind of like intersectional issues, shall we say. So you know how this happens, but then you also, when you're in this bubble of being excited but knowing what's going on, sometimes you can really miss those little nuances. So for example, how it might translate in terms of workloads, and in terms of expertise. Because I mean, I do remember when I first came here, I did have a lot of I did have a lot of students, which was absolutely fine. But it was only sort of later on down the line when I realized, you know, maybe this could be fairer, shall we say. So what I found was, what I observed, and, you know, through my reading, was that there are particular groups that are more likely to sort of do certain tasks like teaching or service to the university. And when we're talking about service, it might be professional, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know, doing things like admin, you know, doing mentoring of students, and like doing a whole lot more nurturing. But then, you know, the same time they're asked to review research articles, bids, etc. And, you know, this, listen, I'm not saying that this is not an important part of work within academia, because you do it. And I'm really blessed to have been able to do these things, because I learned a lot. I learned about what makes a successful bid. I learned about what doesn't. You know, I learned how to review research articles, you know, so, and what people look for in order to kind of incorporate in my own. So this is the kind of bedrock of academic work. Also, in terms of the mentorship, so I see my lovely friend Bernadine is in here. She knows all about this as well. So, you know, we're talking about mentoring students, and particularly those from marginalized groups. This is really important, because when you look at the data and you look at the research, unfortunately, it's, you know, particularly Black and minority ethnic groups, you know, white working class students are the ones that, you know, due to circumstances, you know, pressures, familial responsibilities, etc., may suffer in terms of retention and well-being. So what we do is that, you know, we try to sort of like give that extra nurturing to try and ensure that, you know, retention is kept. Okay, and that they stay in university. So there's a lot of research to support that. I mean, I also wrote an autobiographical paper which kind of explored that. And again, this is a part of the job that I do actually love, because when you see a student who is just feeling like, okay, well, I can't do this and I want to drop out, the best thing at the end of the end of their degree is just to see them going up onto the podium, getting their degrees, and knowing that, yes, you know what, you made it. So I think these are really, really key things. These are the things that kind of help in terms of, you know, sort of like NSS and just the student experience more generally. So I do think these are very, very important things. But there's always a big but, you know, there's always a big but. So, you know, in terms of kind of doing the research, in terms of doing the bids and presenting at conferences and trying to get the global recognition. And I know all of this because I've been really, really working on this in the past couple of years. And I've actually enjoyed it. But at the same time, it can create pressure, especially when you've got multiple bids on at once. Okay, because, you know, you're a bit worried that you might not get the money that from one area. So there's pressure to do that. That has an impact on your standing. You know, presenting at conferences, I love doing that. I absolutely do love doing it. But, you know, again, somebody who's sort of like a bit further back down the track, in order for them to progress, they need to do more of this, and not just at a national level, but at a global level as well. So and I mean, I'm sure this is the same in many other institutions, but basically your opportunities for promotion and progression and recognition are based on these things. I mean, obviously there's other things as well. And I think if you don't have the time to be able to do these things, and like, you know, you're focusing on particular areas, it can kind of have an impact on progression. I mean, I was having a conversation with another Black academic in law yesterday, and she was saying exactly that. She was saying that, you know, like my program is so big and I'm having to do lots and lots of things here. So, you know, this is having an impact on me kind of moving from lecturer to senior lecturer. So I did say to her, look, let's talk. But, you know, these are the things. And then also in terms of sharing expertise, because you have a wealth of expertise. I mean, she has a wealth of expertise around kind of EU law. But, you know, if she doesn't have the time to share it, then this also becomes a little bit of a problem, because then, you know, for her and many others, they may start to feel a little bit disenchanted with their, not with their jobs, but with the situation. But in some cases, it may lead to people just kind of dropping out of academia altogether. I mean, many of us, we don't, but sometimes, you know, people feel like, okay, well, if I can't do the things that I enjoy doing, if I can't share my knowledge, if I can't do X, Y, Z, then what's the point in me being here? And then they move off into other areas like industry, etc., which is a shame, because there's some fantastic knowledge that is going to waste as a result of that, or expertise. So, I mean, when we talk about progression, I think a really good maybe I'm slightly biased here because I just, you know, recently became a professor, but, you know, I'm just looking at what is going on within our strata. Because if you take data from HESA, from between 20 to 21, that was the latest one I could find. It was published in February. You look at the amount of professors in the UK. So there's nearly 20,000, 18,710. Now, of them, 16,300 are males, 6,510 are females. So that's more or less a third of women. No, maybe not a third, but perhaps just a little bit more than a third of women compared to men. And then we break it down to ethnicity. So there's 160 black professors. And when I say black, I mean Black British African, Black British Caribbean, Black, and I don't like this expression, but, you know, people that may come from other places, but I don't like that expression. But there's only 51 Black females, so that's 0.0% of the professoriate, and 109 males, so that's 0.06%. So that's really, really tiny. Okay. And also, when you look at the time that it takes to be promoted, and especially for women and for Black and ethnic minority academics, it takes a whole lot longer. Okay. You know, I've anecdotal evidence, but I'm sure, you know, the data will support this. Some people have sort of been at the same position for kind of like 10 years or so, or if not longer than that. So, you know, it takes longer because of having to do lots and lots of different things as well, and not being able to sort of focus on what you need to do. And then there's the things that are outside of the university. You know, you may have family responsibilities or other caring responsibilities. So yeah, these things will play in. And then it's not always recognized as something that's an essential contribution. It's just like, oh, well, we'll just ask this person for that. And then, you know, they'll ask for it on a one-off instead of a sustained approach. This can be a bit problematic. Okay, this can be problematic. And again, this can lead to people feeling disengaged, feeling disheartened, and eventually down the track thinking, well, what's the point of this? And also there's sort of like, you know, cost in terms of impression management. You know, quite a bit of the research, particularly relating to Black women, you know, there's this feeling that sometimes we have to pretend that we're okay in academia, when in actual fact, you know, like we're not happy with what is going on. But then you have to maintain, because otherwise, you know, if you start saying too much about it, then you become the angry Black woman, or you become the angry woman. So, you know, there are costs, but eventually, like, you know, you can only do this for so long. It's a lot of emotional labor. Okay. And sometimes it can make you physically ill if you keep doing this long enough, but you're really not okay. But then you're feeling that actually I can't talk about what I'm feeling. I can't talk about the fact that I'm not progressing. Eventually, these things will have a knock-on effect on your mental health as well. So, you know, I think aside from the data, we need to kind of have a look at the kind of physical and mental impacts that not being able to do what you're doing and sharing your expertise can have on your experience in academia. No, I mean, this is what I've said before, really largely operates within higher education. But as I've said before, I think that this actually starts before people come into university, because, you look particularly at Black and minority ethnic students, and I would also say working class students as well. Okay. They're often told that academically they're inferior or they're ineducable. So this is a really interesting quote I got from Heidi Safia Mirza, that Black children are often seen as you can't educate us, that there's more focus on our behavior and everything. So then this I'm not saying it always does, and I don't believe it always does at all, but in some cases it might be that people become disengaged from education, but down the line. But then with all of that said, you look at the number of Black and minority ethnic students in higher education. We're overrepresented. At my institution, it's over 50%, okay? And I'm sure it's the case in many others. So, despite these experiences within the early years of education, some people become disengaged, many stay on. And when you look at the amount of people going on to postgraduate level, quite a lot do stay on to master's level, okay? Quite a lot do stay on. And this maybe stems from knowing that, look, chances in the labor market are a bit slimmer, so we need some more qualifications. But then they're also less likely to go on to PhD. Now, I saw a very interesting article in The Guardian a couple of years ago, and it was around, like the lack of Black professors and stuff. I mean, and people were saying that they didn't stay on to PhD because they didn't feel inspired. They didn't see anybody like them. But, for those of, and, others don't because of lack of networks. Sometimes they don't feel like they're supported. Sometimes they feel like they don't have the access. So for example, funding is a major issue. It's not cheap. And, and again, earlier academic experiences. But again, I'd like to say that many do. And for those of us who do, again, myself and Bernard, we've had this conversation many times about kind of like inspiring the next generation. And she's very good at that. And just trying to bring more into academia, showing a different story. So many people do. And it's about sharing expertise, because a lot of our expertise, or that of other groups, is very valuable, and it's often missing in knowledge. And I would say that now, when the kind of knowledge that we get from certain places, like, the Daily Mail, is often prioritized over other knowledge and stuff, I think where there are gaps in knowledge, people are starting to fill it. And I think we should just keep doing that. So I really, really like, I mean, bear with me on this, but my favorite rapper is Nas, okay, Nasir Jones, okay. So I got his first album in 1994, and I played it so many times that at one point my friend kind of hid it from me. My friend hid it because I was playing it so many times, one particular tune. But some things that he says I find really inspiring. And one of the things that he said, we need to keep pushing, because the change of guards is what life is all about. Okay. So, I mean, in terms of my thoughts of changing guards, the changing of the guards, what it means to me is that, first of all, in terms of staff, we need to kind of start thinking about what does, we need to change what we think constitutes expertise. Okay. So it's about just kind of like broadening it and attaching more values to areas that are just kind of seen, more or less taken for granted. So, for example, reviewing bids, reviewing articles, mentoring, pastoral care. We need to attach more value to that, because at the end of the day, this is the bread and butter. And if people don't do this, this is what, I don't want to say that universities will cave in, because they won't, but, this is what makes student experience. And I'm really, really big on that. Okay. And at the end of the day, I mean, I don't like to sort of talk about the £9,000, but, students do need this support, and especially now. So I think we need to do that. And also, I think these are the things that need to have more within workload models. I mean, yeah, there's a lot to say about that, but I won't kind of ramble on this morning. But I do think that we need to review them, give more points to this kind of work as well. Okay. In terms of students as well, I mean, I think I will bang this drum. It will probably be the hill that I die on. But we need to challenge these old and problematic narratives about students from marginalized groups. So whether we are talking about Black and minority ethnic students, whether we are talking about white working class students, whether we are talking about students with disabilities, regardless of their sexuality, I don't care. We need to change this narrative, because just like maintaining it, and then maintaining it all the way through their educational journey, it's not good, it's not acceptable. So we need to change that from the root. Anyway. And then also to give opportunities to engage in research. And I would start this at undergraduate level, okay? So one of the things that we do here at Greenwich, I'm not saying that like, with a gold standard or anything, but just telling you what we do. Like, it's through, we got an office of undergraduate research. I actually ran the first one. Now my other friend called Louise, incidentally, took it over. But anyway, so, what we do is kind of promote staff-student collaborations. So, a student might say, look, I'd like to do a piece of research on this, okay? And then, like, they work with a member of staff on it. So one project I know one of my colleagues did was like, focus group around student experience, and using that to kind of influence student experience policy. So that was a really valuable piece of research. We've had students kind of invite guest speakers in and come and talk about, really prominent guest speakers, to come and talk about, key issues in terms of, where they've got to and how they've got there. So that's been really helpful. I know another student that's kind of talking about sex work within the university, amongst university students, and again, the students led on that. So it's a really good way to kind of build relationships between staff and students, challenge narratives, and also get them into doing research and to develop their research interest. Because like in some cases I'm just thinking of one student that I used to have, his work on autobiography was presented at York University. He's gone on and he's done his PhD on it. So again, it's kind of developing his research interest. And it's all about kind of facilitating formalized mentoring, not one of these off the cuff things. We need to be doing it, okay? Supporting kids, students from marginalized groups, and just kind of saying, okay, well, this is how I got here. Maybe like things have changed, so this is how perhaps you could do it, this is where you need to go. So facilitating that, networks, and also guidance, like, so pointing the students into these networks and just guiding them, and then just telling them what you wish you knew. Okay, so I'd just like to say thank you all for listening to me. So I'm sorry if it turned into a little bit of a rant, but I was trying to hold myself in. But thank you very much. Thank you.